This episode is brought to you by Portland Distro. If you like underground music, movies, and more, go to portlanddistro.com for licensed merch, vinyl, CDs, and more. Plug in the discount code 10OFF, TENOFF, for a 10% discount at portlanddistro.com. What's up, friends? It's time for Everything Went Black. This week, we have Jay Gambit from Executioner's Mask. I literally just discovered these guys when I was on tour this past month. Listened to this record, as well as a couple others I discovered, pretty much every day, man, after I heard it for the first time. Turns out that Jay and I were connected via social media. Yeah, it was really cool. He was an awesome guest, awesome band. There is a show coming up, and if you're in the greater New York area, Executioner's Mask will be playing at St. Vitus in the next few weeks. That's great news. Before I get started, I just want to give a shout out to the other four horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. Of course, that is Brandon Legion of the Horror Wolf 666 podcast, Jackie Smith of Into the Necrosphere, and of course, Mike Scandato and Jeff Kashid, my co-hosts at Necromaniacs. So pretty much, we have the entire week covered for everybody.
Yeah, how you been, man?
I've been doing okay. I just got back from tour about 2 weeks ago, and this is like the first week where I've felt, productive and kind of like back as a member of society and that kind of thing.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that's where I discovered you guys, was on tour.
Really?
Yeah. We were in Albuquerque, and we were barbecuing with a friend. And, it was one of these deals where we got to town early because we wanted to see the Sepultura Cavalera, that set that they did of the old Sepultura songs. So we were there. We were hanging out with our buddy and barbecuing, and it was during the day, and he's like just, playing all these like records. And he's like, yeah, you like this kind of stuff, right? You're into this. He's like playing me all this stuff. The Executioner's Mask record, Despair Anthems, he played me that. And I was like, this is like exactly what I like.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, so
I'm so glad.
Yeah. And I was like, he had it on vinyl, and he was going to take me to this record store. He's like, yeah, you could probably score this on vinyl at this store, but we just didn't have time to do that. And so then I was just streaming it, and it became one of the records that I played on. We had so many overnight drives on this tour. So I always like to hit that first shift, like from 1 a.m. to like 5, right before the sun comes up. You know what I mean? So I would play that record, drive through the night. It was like the perfect, soundtrack for that. I had that record. I had a bunch of other things queued up that I listened to, like The Soft Moon was another thing I listened to, Twin
Nice.
Tribes, Lebanon, Hanover. That was
Yes.
that was another thing. Yeah.
Those guys are great.
Yeah, totally. So that's the stuff I would listen to when we drove. And then so it made sense when I did the wrap-up episode for the tour on this podcast. I was like, let me throw this song in there. And it's so cool that you and I linked up over that. You just happen to be listening to it. And it's like, wow, like mutual admiration. It was really cool.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I've been a fan of your music for a while. Like I'm a huge fan of kind of the more industrial, experimental realm of things. I have a project called Crowhurst.
Yeah.
That I've been doing weird shit with for a while, and so like Tombs and stuff that's like right up my alley. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely like with Despair Anthems, I did not expect anyone to even hear that record. We certainly didn't think that Profound Lord would be down to put it out. So it was a real joy and it's a real joy to know that people, dig these songs. And the new record was really like because we didn't think that anyone was going to hear Despair Anthems. It was a very different approach than with the new record. And now I think that we've got we got that kind of big dreamy record out of our systems. We're making another kind of another different kind of record that isn't Despair Anthems, and it isn't Winterlong. Like, it isn't the kind of very succinct songwriting from Despair Anthems, and it isn't the big kind of big super produced very theatrical almost record that Winterlong is. We're working on something that's almost like Bardo Pond or something like that.
Cool. Yeah, I really actually I can see the difference between Winterlong and Despair Anthems, and some of the reflections I have on Winterlong is that yes, it is more expansive, but there's this kind of a bluesy element to it that reminds me of Bane Wolfkind or something like that. You know that guy?
Yes, I love Bane Wolfkind.
Yeah. So we're on the same page. Okay, good.
Yeah, the roots. There's a lot of neofolk roots in Winterlong, I think, just based in the fact that where I come from in terms of my songwriting, just always people are always like, well, this sounds a lot like Swans. And I think it's just from years of listening to, Michael Girard, listening to Of the Wand and Moon, Death in June, Bane Wolfkind, that kind of, Sol Invictus, all that really kind of weird neofolk stuff that, I guess it's all so European.
Yeah, definitely.
Even in listing all of those bands, it's if you're trying to think about any American traits in it, it would always come back to this kind of Americana, which I don't think is reflective of what an American sound is. I think what I've always kind of aimed for, I think at least with some of three, that Crowhurst record, and definitely with the Mask stuff, is what, kind of exploring the idea of what an American neofolk would be, in that maybe it isn't, the Michael Girard kind of American neofolk, which I think is more steeped in Americana, but more of a modern American sound, which I think honestly is much more lush and dreamy and is farther and farther away from, kind of the desert country, rootsy elements. I mean, they're there, but I think there's a lot of lushness in what at least my interpretation of an American sound is, that isn't really represented. So I think that was my thing with Winterlong, was taking what I love about, like you said, the Bane Wolfkind, Swans, and pushing it into realms that maybe those artists didn't take their songs. And at least for me, that was this kind of dreamy, romantic place, which was also a huge challenge for me, because I've never written anything that wasn't bleak and miserable.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I mean, Despair Anthems is very nihilistic for sure.
Yeah, I thought, it's cliche, but The Cure. I'm a huge fan of Pornography. I think Pornography is one of the greatest records of all time. But Pornography and Disintegration are two sides of the same coin. The Pornography is dark and nihilistic and, kind of it's a bad trip, whereas Disintegration is this kind of beautiful, lush trip, that's equally dark, but it's a whole different thing. And I think Winterlong was my attempt at trying to push myself into more of that romantic Disintegration kind of place.
It's interesting you say that because, like it's only been since like May that I've been listening to you guys, and I've been like listening to it a lot. As a matter of fact, one day I listened to Despair Anthems twice.
Oh shit!
Yeah, when I listened to it while we were driving, and then when we got to I think Sioux Falls, I listened to it while I was walking around looking for coffee. So I listened to that record twice. So I'm familiar with that one. I'm also familiar with Winterlong, and there is a very distinct difference. And I wasn't going to arrive at the same conclusion, but since you brought that up about Disintegration versus Pornography, that is a very apt analogy for those two records. Definitely.
Thank you. I mean, like I'm a huge record collector. That was probably why the move was so shitty for me. It was because it's like I've got like 15,000 records.
Yeah, dude, I hear you, man.
So it's like, but that's the whole joy of making music for me stems from being a big fan of all these bands. And I guess I always feel like every time I make a record, it's kind of like you get to cosplay all the elements of music that you enjoy, or at least that's how I take it,
Sure. Yeah.
For like, because I don't know, I don't, as weird as it is to say, I barely consider myself a musician. I consider myself a person who is a big fan of music and who's very lucky to work with a lot of real musicians. Like my guitarist is fucking, both of my guitarists are incredible. Christian is an insane talent. Melissa's an incredible drummer. Like Frog is an incredible drummer. I have not worked with somebody who is not like stupid level talented. And because of that, these records are really, it's because of that the records are as good as they are. It's not because of really anything I do. It's just that I know, I guess as a fan of music, it kind of is a joy for me to be able to assemble these musicians I love and, help, bring ideas to fruition that, I think, okay, well, I like this on this record. I like this concept on that record. Maybe we can do something like this here, or do a song that kind of has this energy, but place it in this context, but it all stems from just being a fan of these records and these bands and these stories, and just wanting to do, wanting to do something like that.
Yeah, that's definitely something that comes through for sure. Now, before we get going too far, all right, I did some research on you guys, and there's like 3 names that come up. Okay, and I want to talk about who's actually in the band, because I've seen pictures with like 5 people in the photograph, but I've only been able to find like 3 names that are actually members of the band. So,
okay,
who's in the band? How did it form? Who does what? Like all those basics. I want to cover that.
So it's weird. So the band formed basically because I'm friends with Ryan Wilson, who's legendary, like everything. I want to say legendary death metal dude, but that would be selling them short, because they've also got like grindcore, and they've got the Howling Boy. They've got so many great projects, and we've been friends for a while. And we've talked about doing a project together since we've worked on tracks together. And I think they just made a Facebook status being like, I'm currently not working on anything. Who wants to start a band?
Oh,
So
okay.
it was like, okay, well, let's start a post-punk band. And Ryan wasn't like a post-punk fan or anything, but they were down to explore the genre. And that was it, you know. Ryan, and then I introduced Craig to the group, and we worked on a couple of songs and made the True Blue EP.
That one I haven't listened to yet. I haven't gotten to that one yet, but that's something I have to check out.
Well, if you've heard Despair Anthems, basically the True Blue EP plus the second EP we wrote turned into Despair Anthems, because we had the True Blue EP, which was put out by a label called Somatic in Austin. And they put out the first stuff by Street Sex.
Oh yeah, that band's cool. I like them.
They're incredible. And they actually remixed a song from Winterlong. But Somatic put out True Blue, and then we recorded an EP. I think it was called Funeral Gardens. I'm not quite sure. And I sent it to a label called Funeral Party, and I love them, and they put out amazing stuff, and they were not interested in putting it out. And I totally understand, and I was like, well, I don't know what to do with this project then, because I was like, I don't know any post-punk labels. And I remember saying to the label, I'm like, well, if you don't put this out, like, I guess I was like, do you know anybody that might want to put it out? Because like, I don't know what to do with this. And the project kind of almost died then, but I sent a message to Chris, and I didn't think Chris was even going to be into it or even respond. But I think I sent a message to Chris over Facebook and said, hey, look, you know, here's this project. Here's, you know, I combined the True Blue EP in the EP we just sent, and I was like, this is the record. You know, tentative name for it is Despair Anthems. You know, what do you think? And Chris loved it. So I was like, I can't believe this, but Profound Lore is putting out our record. And I don't think Craig or Ryan believed me.
No, that's Profound Lore is a great label. I'm a big fan of most of the stuff that he puts out. First of all, it's tremendous that Bruni responded, because he has not answered an email of mine for several years, and I've been trying to connect him with other bands that I think he'd be interested with, but he just doesn't respond. So that's cool that he got back to you.
Yeah, I didn't think he was going to respond to me. I don't think I do anything particularly special. So it's like, I don't know why anybody would open up my email. But I think, you know, I'm very, very thankful he did. I'm very thankful that he listened to it, and, you know, we were all stoked. And then the record came out, and it was like, people really liked it, you know. But the issue was playing it live. So
now that's because you got, you know, programmed drums, you know, 2 guitar players. I mean, I know that you don't really have like a performing band with the core of the 3 people that you have. Is that why there was a challenge doing this live? You had to, you know, get other people involved.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, but like Ryan doesn't play live. As a rule, Ryan's a studio musician, so it is like, it all has to kind of be rebuilt from the ground up, which is fine, but it requires a little bit of engineering. So with the live shows, at first we had a little lineup that was going to do something, and then of course COVID happened and things needed to be restructured. But fortunately, Craig is an incredible band leader, and just pulled together this really, really, really tight lineup of Houston musicians. One of them is Daniel from Monochrome Lover. Melissa, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce her last name, but she's in a bunch of bands. Daniel, Tony is in a band called Thunder Tank and a bunch of other projects. Like, everybody's in a ton of heavy hitting projects, and they all kind of jump together and learn these songs from Winterlong and Despair Anthems in very short amount of time. So we recently went on tour and it was incredible. But that's why that lineup is different. We also added my friend and one of my favorite composers, Christian Molinar, and they are just kind of not only an incredible musician, but an incredible live musician. And I didn't know how much energy they brought to a live set, but they really crushed it just playing synth. So, I think altogether it brings an entirely different energy. So for album 3, the live lineup is, we're all writing the record.
Oh, cool. That's great.
Yeah. It's great because, it also where Despair Anthems was written with, oh, well, I guess we're just going to write some songs. And then Winterlong was like, all right, we're going to write an album, and craft an album. And now this one is very much like we're a band who's going to jam out an album. They're just very different approaches to writing the record. And I think that, I don't know, post-punk is a weird genre to me. And I get bored really quickly within it. Like, it's hard for me to listen to 3 post-punk records in a row by the same band and not feel like I'm listening to the same record, kind of in different clothing. And there's no shot at any specific band, more kind of a pitfall of the genre itself being something that's so deeply rooted in nostalgia.
Right.
So my thought was, like, if we approach each record differently, with Crowhurst, I was like, well, with every record, we're going to have a different lineup and a different producer and a different, different everything. So everything is going to be completely different. And with Despair Anthems, it's slightly more subtle, but it's still kind of taking different approaches every single time. So that way I know we arrive at a different destination. It's like if you're trying to drive cross country and it's like 3 people driving cross country, one person takes a Lamborghini, the other person takes a Hummer, and the other person takes a bike. If they're traveling for long enough and hard enough, they'll all get to the same destination, but it'd be a very different journey.
Yeah, one of the things that you touched on, which I also believe is, post-punk, whatever you want to call it, is definitely like this almost nostalgic by the numbers thing. And a lot of bands that try to work within that genre end up making records that are definitely very similar. Not only are they similar, but you can also go back and pick out what records they might have been listening to inspire the stuff that they wrote. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, where you guys succeed, in my opinion at least, is that, I hesitate to even call it post-punk. You know what I mean? Like, I know that that's the easy, moniker to tag you guys with, but it's just like, I listen to it and I'm like, okay, here's this part but it's very unique. I guess that's a roundabout way of saying to me that I feel like the band is very unique. And then furthermore, between the 2 records, the 2 records are very different too. Like even your vocals sound different somewhat.
Thank you. So I'm a big fan negative reviews, or like
Have you gotten many of those?
with Despair Anthems, the overarching thing I heard is like, man, he sounds bored. And like, I get it. Like, I listen to quite a bit of post-punk where I'm like, this vocalist sounds like they just fucking rolled him out of bed. Sometimes it seems like they didn't even roll his ass out of bed.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just like they put a fucking, gamer mic on the dude and was like, all right, go. Go. What's the least enthusiasm you could possibly have for being in this band? Express it. So I thought with Despair Anthems, I thought that I was emoting. But I guess I wasn't. And that pushed me to be even more theatrical on Winterlong. And kind of take some risks. And I had asked Jeff I was like, can you double track? And Jeff was kind of like, I really don't want to. And I was like, I would really like to double track. And they were like, all right. So they did it, and it sounded great. And I'm glad they did. And they made it, I don't know if I'm sure it would have sounded great if we had single tracked it, because Jeff rules, but I'm not that confident. So we double tracked. And yeah, I mean, I'm very self-conscious about how I sing anyway.
Well, I think everyone is really about that,
Yeah, I'm glad that everyone is, because I know I am. And I think with the more intense, like the screaming vocals and stuff like that, I feel a little bit more confident. But on songs like Wasting Away, I legitimately thought, like, I'm going to put this record out and there are going to be a bunch of people who are like, oh, great. Like, it sounds like a fucking dying cat on the last track. Dude can't stay on key at all. And fortunately, I haven't heard any of that, which is really nice. So it's like, okay, cool. Maybe the singing thing, maybe I can do more of that. I think, that all of that really even started with, like, on Crowhurst 1, I did a song. There was a song on there called Judgment, I believe. And when we were all writing it together, the band I think they wanted it to be a quiet part. I may be misremembering this. It may be confusing two different songs, but I think the band wanted it to be a quiet part, and I didn't. So I was like, the compromise was that I would sing it. And in one of the reviews, Joseph Schaefer, who runs Northwest Terror Fest, said that I sounded like Andrew Eldritch. And I was okay. Yeah, I was like, oh, that's really cool. So I just kept singing. It was like someone noticed and said something positive, and and there happened to be a person whose reviews I respect and opinions I respect. So I was like, all right, well, if this person who I respect says that my singing isn't bad, I'm gonna keep singing. And I think that led to me singing on 2 and even more on 3, and then eventually Despair Anthems, which is nothing but singing, and then Winterlong, which I think is really me attempting to actually sing. So I'm glad that the different vocal stylings didn't come off too alien.
No, it was definitely welcome, man. Because like I said, I really, in my own creative output, I try not to have each record sound the same, and I try to do different things, and I appreciate when bands also do that. Go back to the Swans. Like, how many different types of records have the Swans made? You know what I mean? And yeah, just so many different textures and approaches and experimental things, and acoustic, grinding, the early grinding, misanthropic stuff that they did in the beginning,
Oh yeah. Well, that stuff, I mean, like, I've always loved Michael Giroir's kind of infinite ability to kind of transform as an artist. And I think I would hope that when I get to the point in my life that Michael Giroir's at, that I can look back on the records that I've made and have that kind of, have at least even a tenth of, what Michael Giroir has done in terms of the amount of different, basically the palette they've touched, how much they've managed to touch upon in terms of sounds and moods and ideas and emotions that they've conveyed in their art.
Yeah. Crowhurst has been around for a while, and you guys have like all sorts of stuff out between like LPs, EPs, collaborations, like all that stuff. Is that still an active project that you're working on?
It's active in the sense that as long as I'm alive, the project is gonna be sort of active.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm working on some film score stuff right now.
Right on.
It's a wise person once said you can't miss something until it goes away. And I don't know if the project is worth missing until I put it away and focus on other things. I've got a complex emotional relationship with the project that is so deeply tied to a lot of pain and a lot of frustration, and a lot of negativity. It's hard to go over a lot of what I went. I didn't fake it with Crowhurst, and I think that the problem with committing to not faking it when you're working with pain is that you open the wound all the time, and on a very good night you're still left bleeding, and on a bad night you're left bleeding alone. And that's just it was at a certain point I had bled out, and there was nothing left for me to pump out, especially after the pandemic. It seemed like the right time for me to focus on something that wasn't so brutal. And that's not to say I wouldn't be open to touring with Crowhurst again and playing more shows. And I hear now more than ever, truly more than ever, now that it's gone, I'm hearing from people being like, yeah, Crowhurst X, Y, and Z. I've seen Crowhurst shirts. I love the project. And I'm used to being a person in a basement playing noise to 4 people at a time where really, noise wasn't even considered extreme music. It was considered something different. It was like considered performance art. And the idea of putting noise in a metal show or grind show was like, something that like old heads were like, oh yeah, I remember when, noise bands would come through from Japan and they would play like Zenigiva.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but like if you were like a younger noise promoter or a younger metal promoter, you weren't putting a noise band on your show. You were like, no, that's going to scare away people who want to hear riffs. Where are your guitars? I once had a promoter say, well, you can do your noise set, but can you hold a guitar while you do it? And I was like, I'm not going to use the guitar. And they're like, yeah, but can you hold the guitar? Because we know that if people don't see you holding the guitar, they're going to be alienated.
That's weird, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird, but it's also like, that's what that was really, this is going to sound sort of weird, but like that was the Full of Hell kind of era where it was like before Full of Hell and The Body were like taking noise acts out and forcing promoters to fucking book noise bands, because ultimately if they didn't, they wouldn't get the fucking big draw grind act or doom act that they wanted to put on. So they were like, all right, we're gonna integrate these noise bands. Well, it's like after that you started seeing a change. You started in 2015, 2016, 2017, it was like everybody knew noise. But I don't like, I'm still stuck in the mindset of it's like 2014, 2013, and I'm standing inside a fucking metal club trying to explain to some promoter that, like, no, noise is a real thing that, like, metalheads will enjoy if you just give them a chance. Like, having to explain, like, no, I just went overseas, and in England they're upset that I'm not playing for longer than 15 minutes. And over here, you're acting like if I play longer than 10 minutes, you're going to cut the fucking sound on me. So it's like, what's the disconnect? So yeah, like, I don't, now that I've shown the chip on my shoulder, like, when I think about Crowhurst, I don't think about it in, I guess, the terms that I think a lot of people do. So I don't know when it comes to returning it. I'm hoping that some of the larger bands that are coming back now that are my buds, they've said that they might want to do some shows together. I would be more than happy to, dust off the Crowhurst name for a couple of shows with those groups. But if not, like, life goes on. I've got Mask.
Well, yeah, definitely. So what's up with fuck you, Dave Grohl? I want to hear about that, because I have feelings about Dave Grohl.
So there was back, I think 2011, I had made a record called Fuck You Morrissey, and it was just like, it was before, like, Morrissey had gone viral for saying more dumb shit. I think it was just a situation where I had gotten a dumb haircut, and people were saying that I looked like Morrissey. And I was very upset about it. And I was like, yeah, fuck that guy. And, I had known all the terrible things that he had said, the terrible, like, the anti-Semitic stuff and the racist stuff. That wasn't even the thing that, like, was the biggest impetus, as terrible as to say. There was actually an article that some BBC person had written about, they were like Morrissey's, they had gone to be Morrissey's roadie, and, like, they were like a lifelong Morrissey fan, and they had, like, Morrissey's, they tried to do some sort of interview with Morrissey, and it was turned down. And then right before the tour, like a week before, Morrissey's crew had said, okay, you can come on tour with Morrissey, but you got to do all these weird things, like, he came into the room and they were like, he had to, like, guess a couple of records, some sort of super pretentious stuff. And, like, Morrissey sprays a fragrance spray between him and the front row so he doesn't need to smell his audience.
Oh, man.
Really. And then, like, right before the tour was about to start, the roadie is asked by the crew to, please leave the tour. So he didn't actually end up being a roadie. Morrissey kicked him off the tour before it even started. And I was like, this is the most Spinal Tap level of douchebaggery I've ever read. So, with the racist stuff and the pretentious stuff, I was like, this dude is a cartoon. This dude is a legitimate cartoon. I can't think of a better topic for a harsh noise record, because also at the same time, what was going on in the harsh noise world was it was like everybody was trying to top each other with how extreme and gross and violent they could be.
Right.
Um,
Misogynistic. That was also
yeah,
another angle that people were using in that world too.
yeah, like misogynistic, racist, and it was like I made that album Snuff because I was literally like, okay, you want ugliness? There's an ugly record. It's very, very ugly, and it's hard to listen to, and it should be hard to listen to because the things that you're talking about are ugly as fuck, and it should be painful and disgusting. And you know, like when you strip away all of the kind of exploitation and all of the aestheticizing it, it's just horror and misery and disgustingness and nothing you would want to actually, relive. But, it's used as a topic. But that's Snuff. The Fuck You Morrissey was like, okay, well, here's my reaction to these kind of like ultra extreme topics and noise. This is what I feel ultra extreme about. Fuck Morrissey. And people really like that record. So it turned into, well, when I made another record that kind of felt like the sequel to that, it was like, Fuck You Beatles.
Right.
Or
yeah.
no, yeah, it was like, or Fuck You Bono was another one.
Oh, yeah, that was another one too. Yeah, Fuck You Bono. Yeah.
Well, the final one was Fuck You Dave Grohl. And that's gotten me in trouble. So there is a writer for, or I guess now they're no longer a writer. They're a much more important person in the music industry. And I made them very upset because they're a very big Dave Grohl fan. And I guess there was a situation where like Dave Grohl was being a douchebag in some historic theater, and he kicked a beer over onto some fucking really nice powered JBL speaker that I know wasn't his, and he hurt his leg. And oh yeah, he slipped on it. And then he spilled beer all over a speaker, and then slipped on the beer and broke his leg. And I was like,
that's a real story.
Yeah, it's
That's
a real.
awesome.
It's on video.
Oh wow!
And there was it was like a viral video, and then to make matters worse, he went on the rest of his tour in a fucking throne.
Throne. Oh my god!
Throne. So needless to say, it wasn't like the dude didn't deserve to be made fun of. But I was like, dude fucking deserves it for spilling beer all over some poor venue's fucking really nice powered JBL speakers. And then they got really upset at me. And I think that spurred the whole Fuck You Dave Grohl thing. I also really wanted to work with Olivia Sewell, who does the comic Suckville. And they did the cover and it's like a 12-page PDF comic that comes with the download of the album. And it's like a comic about how Dave Grohl is a piece of shit. Like, there's like one that's basically a continuation of the cover where it's like, we miss you, Kurt.
Yeah, there's something about Dave Grohl that I just don't like either, man. He pops up too much in documentaries. He seems completely fucking boring, if you ask me. Yeah, I know he was in Scream, who cares, really? I don't care that he was in Scream. And, yeah, and he's mediocre, man,
He strikes me as a cop.
Yeah, he has like a little bit of that authoritarian vibe because of the way that I understand that he makes records, apparently.
How does he make records? Because that's the one thing I don't know about him.
Well, apparently it's the Dave Grohl show,
Well, that surprised me.
Yeah, but I mean, like we were talking about collaboration earlier with the new Executioner's Mask efforts. And this guy's got all these musicians, you know, and it's the Dave Grohl show through and through.
That's so strange. Like, because he plays. I know that the first Foo Fighters record, he played everything, and like, I don't think that he is like someone who would not have the talent to do everything. It's just like, dude, lay out. Let somebody else fucking play. Like, I don't know. It's like the whole like John Coltrane, Miles Davis playing together thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like, lay out, man. Let somebody else fucking play.
It's the sheer hubris, I think, that he has, which really gets under my skin with him, you know, and I think that's why I take jabs at him whenever I can. And there was that ridiculous, actually the series that he did, I think it was on HBO. Sonic Highways.
Sonic Highways.
Like, if he wasn't in the documentaries, they would have been cool. Like, he goes to, all these different studios. Or if he would just chill out for a little bit and not put his band all over it and have to record a song and show them writing lyrics and all this stuff. Like,
bingo, dude. Bingo.
If he could just like be the journalist, and not he be the focal point and put the focus on the actual content, the actual subjects. And I think that's really what soured me to that guy, like watching those.
Jack White used to be like that, and then I guess he got the memo where it was like Jack White had to be the center of everything, and then he realized it was like, we care a lot more when everything isn't the Jack White show.
Yeah.
So it was like he just went back to like dressing like a normal human being and wearing being like, yeah, we're gonna save Detroit. We're gonna press records again. It's gonna be great. Music is great. And like now he has more money than like he's got more money than most people in the music industry, and he deserves it. Like, but I feel like, I don't know, like, there's no chance that Dave Grohl is gonna fucking get any more self-aware than he currently is. I think that's the thing. Like you said, that Sonic Highways thing where it was like, if it didn't have Dave Grohl in it, it'd be amazing. But it'd also be like 14 minutes long.
Yeah.
Also, getting fucking, what was it, Steven Spielberg or something to produce your band's fucking 6-part promotional documentary series. I don't know, man. It was like his fucking 8th album. Like, nobody likes a band so much on their 8th album that it requires a 6-part miniseries. That shit, like, you do that the first couple years of a band when nobody gives a fuck about you. You shelve all the footage, and then maybe in enough years that, like, when you're on that 6th album and you're like, man, people will really give a shit about a 6-part miniseries about us. Release a 3-part compilation of the footage you recorded during your first record. Like, nobody wants to hear. That's why nobody, when you go and see old bands in concert, nobody's like, yeah, play the new one. Like, at least not fucking, if you're like a Foo Fighters band, if you're like a metal band or somebody who's doing creative shit, that's different.
Yeah,
but like,
totally.
Foo Fighters is fucking not going to all of a sudden come out and be like, all right, album 6, we're really flipping the script. They're the fucking Foo Fighters.
Yeah, they should be giving away a pair of Dockers with each record. You know what I mean? They're just like the most generic, like, middle of the road basic thing I've ever heard, really. And I know a lot of people that that surprised me that they actually like that band.
Yeah, and I have no problem with like radio. I love radio rock. It's not even that I don't have a problem with it.
Totally.
Like, one of my favorite records right now is Razorblade Suitcase by Bush. Like, I cannot stop listening to that record. But like, man, you want to talk about 2 records that were released around the same time that have had very different impact. It's like that first Foo Fighter record, I think it's called like One by One, and Bush, Razorblade Suitcase. Oh man, like, right at the end of grunge, two very different takes on what post-grunge would be. Is like Foo Fighters coming out with this very like stadium, big sounding, springy music, whereas Bush was like, all right, we're gonna take all of the kind of structure that comes with the grunge thing, and we're gonna just make it our own. Like Steve Albini did this amazing essay on the liner notes of the reissue, where they just talk about, it could have been anybody, but it happened to be, this very pretty looking 4-piece. And I think because Gavin Rossdale was pretty, everybody hated on him. But like, if he was just if he looked like anybody else from Seattle and not some pretty Australian guy, or I think he's British, but pretty dude with an accent, he wouldn't have gotten the hate it did. But yeah, what a fucking record. And then, then you have Dave Grohl and fucking Foo Fighters and Monkey Wrench, like, God, why did we choose that band, to be the stadium band, and Bush is like only playing, 5 dates in America. It's a fucking it's a real travesty.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that it's, that the Foo Fighters are a very ridiculous band, really. And, I get such chills whenever I see Dave Grohl at this point on television or anywhere, and pictures of him, or, it shows up on some documentary,
He's got the worst fucking facial hair. Like, what? Someone with so much money shouldn't look so fucking greasy all the time. Like I don't understand. There were pictures of him on red carpets where he still looks like, I don't know, he just looks fucking ill manicured. It's like, I've seen like movie stars who have to look homeless, and I've seen like if they can make the dudes from Mastodon look like they belong in some fucking grooming commercial, surely there's somebody who can do something with Dave Grohl's fucking face. But nobody does. Nobody does. Anyway, I feel like we've been talking about Dave Grohl for like
an hour, maybe. Nah.
The majority of this podcast is just fuck Dave Grohl.
Yeah. Well, you guys have some gigs coming up, I think, right? Got some shows coming up.
Yeah. We are playing Vitus. And like our last couple gigs were with Expander, but other than Expander, we didn't have much. Like, I wasn't super hands-on with booking, and these shows I'm a little bit more hands-on with. At least the Philly show is us in Anatomy, which is super cool. That's Jenna, who plays bass in Uniform and in Portrayal of Guilt and in a bunch of other bands. And then let's see, for Vitus, it's us with Kill Alters, that's members of Black Dice.
Oh, okay.
And Picture Plane, who is like one of the godfathers of Witch House and one of my favorite projects. Trace Amount is DJing.
Oh, wow. So what are the dates? Because this will be up before. I remember you told me the dates, but for everyone who was listening, and that's in Philly or the New York metropolitan area. Yeah,
those are the 21st is in Philly, 22nd is in Vitus, and then we have 2 shows with Wake, one in Quebec City and the other one is in Montreal, and that's on the 23rd and 24th, and that's with Wake and Bleeding Out. and I have not ever played in Canada before, so I'm really excited.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's in July. Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's in July, and then hopefully we can get some gigs booked up with y'all, because that would be really, really sick.
That would be great, man. And I would totally be stoked to do that. And we should talk about all that. And I think it'd be real fun because, you know, I really, you know, appreciate you guys. And even though we're different, there's similarities. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and like, man, like I'm a pretty honest person. I can't fucking deal with like 3 metal bands in a row on a gig that sound even remotely similar. I'm like, my attention span is so fucking short. So the idea of like bands that have a connecting thread but sound different is like so much more exciting of a package. That's why like we our last tour was with Expander, who's like another kind of like mind melding, genre bending metal band, where it's like on paper we wouldn't, it wouldn't be like, oh yeah, let's throw those 2 bands together. But like when you talk about what a really exciting fun bill to go to is, it's like, oh man, us 2 was just like just fun. And I think that's what I could see like a bill with us 2 being like, it's just fun. Like I don't care about if things work like musically, because ultimately people show up and they have a good time, and you know, maybe they are not somebody who like is always listening to metal. Like you said, like when you got into the car, you weren't listening to bands that sounded exactly like the bands you just got off stage with. And I think that's the beautiful thing now with like this new kind of mindset about touring. Because I remember being younger and it was like, well, you can't book a doom band with a death metal band. What will the death metal kids think? You know, and now it's like, yeah, let's fucking throw Mask and Tombs together and let's go out on the road, and, you know, people will come out like, right, the 200 Stab Wounds tour with Fearing just happened. And that was a fucking huge success. And I know Gatecreeper just went on tour with, I think, Fearing as well.
Yeah, Fearing is another band I really enjoy too. They're a great band.
God, they're so good. Fearing and Death Bells. Are you familiar with Death Bells?
Death Bells? No. I should check that out.
Yeah. Death Bells is like, Death Bells is one of my favorite currently active post-punk bands.
Okay.
And Death Bells, and then I don't know if Dark Blue is active still, but are you familiar with them?
No, I'm not familiar with them at all.
So Dark Blue is one of the biggest inspirations for us in Mass.
Okay.
John Sharkey, who was in Clock Cleaner, and Andy Nelson from Ceremony is in it.
Okay.
And it's just amazing music. Jeff, who produced Despair Anthems, produced all their stuff. And he produced Winterlong. It's just like Dark Blue is playing in a few days in New York.
Oh.
And I've been like really tempted to just come up and take the trip and bite the bullet and get a hotel room, because it's like they never play. But yeah, like Fearing, yeah, Death Bells, Fearing, Dark Blue, those are my like big suggestions. And the Infinity Ring, big suggestions for like folks who are doing great things in post-punk right now, and post-punk air quotes, you know, whatever the word is for like dark music now that isn't, you know, metal, but is riff adjacent.
Riff adjacent. I like that.
Like, yeah, we're like riff adjacent. I know that there's riffs, and there's definitely riffs. Like Ryan plays guitar on Despair Anthems and I believe on Winterlong, so there's definitely riffs. I don't think it's possible for them to make music without riffs. But like, I don't know. I don't. We're not like the goal is not to be aggressive musically, I guess just aggressive emotionally. makes us sound like an emo band, but yeah, like we want to
you guys sound like you're that's kind of like this almost toxically male kind of we're aggressive emotionally, like
yeah,
I like
exactly. We're trying to be I want to bring that toxic male energy. I gotta stop talking before I get myself canceled. But yeah, no, that's like, I think ultimately, like, coming from a world where I was making such like harsh music, making music that is diametrically not harsh, that's just like maybe riffy, is as harsh as it would get, but like, I don't know, on stage it's a very different story. On stage it's just huge amps and you can't get away from the noise thing. But I don't know, I like the fact that on record and in spirit, we're not trying to bring that kind of overt aggression. But I don't know, hopefully, well, you'll see when you see us live, you'll see that like we're more about the big waves of like, if, you know how like My Bloody Valentine were in the 80s? Yeah, where it's like, let's fucking make big giant washes of sound in between songs, and let's bring up the crescendos to a point where they're like physically present. That's more the intensity that like we try and bring live. And I think that's why, I don't know, I guess that's why we work more, at least for me, and with metal than like, well, I would love to be able to go out there and play like 10,000 cap venues like fucking indie bands, because God knows that those dudes get fucking hotel rooms where like really comfortable pillow top mattresses. at least that's what I think. Like the dudes who get to play like whatever late show isn't like the big top tier late show, but like Seth Meyers, they get to play like Seth Meyers. I want to be like, I've always wanted to be like an indie band that gets to play like Seth Meyers, but unfortunately, like, I'm too committed to playing loud, dissonant bullshit, even if it's like pretty on record. So, I think we'll always work better, because, at our core, we are just, like folks, like we're like metal people, punk metal, whatever it's called. Like, we like big amps playing loud and not really giving a fuck, even though the music doesn't really, it isn't like metal overtly.
I'm intrigued, man. So I'm really looking forward to that show next month. And yeah, I'm definitely going to be there at the St. Vitus show for sure.
Dude, I'm looking forward to seeing you. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah, fuck yeah, dude. And that Dark Blue show is at one of my favorite new venues in New York City, TVI.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's run by Jasper, who I believe Jasper was in the band called Cult of Youth, who is an amazing New York neo-folk band.
Yeah.
And they released stuff on Sacred Bones. So
that's another great label too, Sacred Bones.
Yeah, and also from what I know, TVI has all of its art done by Alexander Ayer, Death Traders. So it's like a double whammy of cool shit. So yeah, I actually need to check out TVI. It seems like the coolest fucking place.
So yeah, anyone who's intrigued by this show that we're talking about, that's July 7th at TVI. And I think technically that's in Queens, maybe. But I went there once. I saw Bambara play there once, like last year. And I was like, TVI, I never heard of it. But then I found out, and it was like far enough out of town where, like, not out of town, but far enough into the borough where it's not, you can actually park. I parked right in front of the venue. It's crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, yeah, it's in Ridgewood, which is Queens. That's where it is. And, beautiful venue. You know, not too big. It's like maybe 250 maybe capacity.
Oh,
And,
wow.
yeah, it's fairly small actually, and really cool vibe. Like the front room is a bar. There's all this cool artwork, you know, hung up there. Yeah, it's a good spot.
Dude, I feel like, you know, New York still has some really, really great like venues, even if these venues like only exist for short amounts of time. It's like these bursts of like cultural greatness. It's like, I don't know. I grew up, my dad was like a true blue New Yorker. Like he did all the merchandising for CB's.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, like when I was a kid, I got to go to CB's and all that. So it's like, you know, I kind of got to understand New York through like how he explained it. And when I got old enough to kind of move to the city, it was such a different, it was post 9/11, you know, like rent had gotten kind of insane. And it was, you know, when I was a kid, it was like, you can't go below 48th Street. And now it's like you can't smoke on a subway platform.
Yeah.
So it was like, what is New York? You know, what is the city? And over the past few years, it's like, I guess it's started building back up these kind of really wonderful places like TVI that, you know, because I just missed like ABC No Rio.
Oh, right.
You know,
yeah.
like I had just gotten to, you know, New York as the Vice offices were sweeping through and taking over Brooklyn. So it was like I didn't get to experience any of that, that part of New York. It was.
Now I'm getting like all nostalgic about that. Like, I mean, some of Toombs' earliest shows was at ABC No Rio, which is kind of funny to think about that. And there used to be this excellent venue where Vice's offices are now called Death by Audio.
Death by Audio.
Yeah. That place was great.
I remember like in the early days of YouTube watching videos that were shot on like fucking shitty Nokia flip phones at Death by Audio and thinking like, man, I can't wait to go to these crazy New York City warehouse shows, and then they just weren't there. And it's like,
yeah, man, that was ABC No Rio and Death by Audio were places that we played a lot. I mean, and I had like a pretty good relationship with the guy who booked like our type, like all kinds of shows happened there. But this one particular guy booked like Wolves in the Throne Room. He booked us. And we, you know, after a while, we just like would talk to him and we would put a bill together of, you know, mostly local bands or maybe some out of town bands that were friends, and really, really just good vibes. And like, you know, people showed up and it was fun, and it was like kind of wild because it wasn't really a venue. It was just a room, you know, and they sold beer out of like a bucket somewhere. It was like, you know, very, very, you know, very, had this clandestine sort of vibe to it, which I really appreciated.
It sounds like the New York that was explained to me as a kid. But like, that was more what I mean is like, you know, I got to college and that was gone.
Yeah.
And it was like, man, what is New York for this generation? And like during that period, I moved to Los Angeles, and fortunately, like they were having their own kind of little movement scene thing with the theaters and stuff, and I got to be part of that kind of community while it was around. Helped out with a lot of like the Cinefamily stuff, and you know, I came to New York and I got to see, you know, Vitus kind of explode and become the new CBs. And it's great, you know, everybody from around the world knows Vitus.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
It's like, you know, it truly is the CBGBs of our generation, you know, but like beyond that, it was very much like hard to book in New York. It was hard to like find where to do stuff that wasn't, you know, indie shows like Baby's All Right. So having TVI open up and be so fucking cool, it's like, wow, there's going to be more little things that, you know, I guess really shine a light on this culture. Like I was talking to somebody about how they were like, what happened in the 2010s where all these bands were in movies and, you know, it was like there was some sort of infrastructure. And I was like, yeah, you mean like it died right around the time that Scion Rockfest stopped happening.
Yeah.
And Red Bull Music Academy stopped happening. And like, but for a minute there, the rest of the world, you know, like somebody outside of the fucking 6 labels that ultimately have, you know, the financial control came in and they were like, yeah, you know, we'll put money into art and this culture. And like, you know, that was a wonderful time. That was like, you know, I remember the craziest gigs and things that couldn't have happened, like Merzbow in Chicago, where in giant warehouses. Some of the bands now that are like huge got their start at these Red Bull Music Academy shows or these Scion shows. I'm convinced that High on Fire wouldn't have the profile they currently have if it weren't for like the support of Scion, stuff like that. So it's like, and I don't think we would have had that Sleep reunion if it weren't for Scion. Definitely if it weren't for like Third Man and Jack White. So it all comes down to like, yeah, we're all in love with this culture. You know, you clearly have dedicated your life to it.
Yeah.
I've dedicated my life to it. But like, we're only able to do so much because we're just the creators. We're not money people. We have when you're running your own ship, it's a lot different than when you're a cog in somebody else's much larger ship. And it's like the profit margin on selling records is very different than the profit margin on selling fucking cars or, you know, energy drinks or whatever. And it's like, you know, the ability to choose whether or not you want to spend the fucking 6 hours of your day that you've dedicated to this culture you love doing, you know, the hustling of booking and making sure the promoting is done right, making sure the sound is good, making sure the bill is curated and everybody gets paid well? Or would you rather just fucking like do it and wear some nice comfortable Scion socks, you know? like
oh man, those socks were pretty nice actually. Yeah, I remember those.
That's what I mean. It's like, you know, I remember during that period, like people were upset, like, oh, bands are selling out. And it's like, no, bands are getting paid. Like, and I think that's, that further than just getting paid, it's what you're doing in terms of what you're getting paid for. And you're not getting paid for the performance. You're getting paid to be culturally relevant, to be important enough to be a part of this larger thing that we all fucking, you know, have to deal with every day, that is like capitalism and the cars outside and the fucking, you know, like the fucking food that we have to eat that ultimately has to get trucked from place to place and, you know, manufactured in a factory and shit like that. Like we're not just like doing this and then also living in the world around us. It's like, no, now we're a part of that kind of global thing that is, you know, cars and energy drinks and fucking, you know, Toyota. Like, and that's cool. It means it's like fucking, you know, when KMFDM got put in Mortal Kombat soundtrack, and, you know, industrial kids were like, how could they do that? They're selling out. And it's like, no, what they're doing is they're exposing the genre to the fucking rest of the world. And it's like, but when we don't have that, which we don't, like, Scion's gone and Red Bull is not putting its money into anything that isn't jumping off of a fucking cliff, you know? And I swear, if anybody from Red Bull is listening, we will play after, you know, like in a space shuttle. We'll play underwater. We'll play wherever the fuck you want. Just book us someplace weird, and pay us to do it. We'll fucking do some wacky stunt. But on the real, like, that's not happening. So it's like, you know, we're going to continue to work as hard as we can, but it's never going to be the same as when we have like the big machine backing us. So I think like that's kind of the bummer for me, is like, you know, that era where it was like ABC No Rio and, you know, Death by Audio and the Red Bull Music Academy and all that stuff. It was so fucking creatively beautiful. And right now we're at this point where we don't have any of that infrastructure. All we have is a bunch of musicians with the desire to do something that's somewhat different than what's been done before. And like, I think that's enough. I think that, you know, we've seen through, you know, promoters just being open-minded and, you know, taking the risk and then realizing it works. That, you know, bands like Mask and Fearing and Infinity Ring and, you know, like, we don't just belong in indie shows, and we don't just belong at post-punk shows or at goth clubs. And, you know, we belong wherever the fuck we want to be. And like, I think that as time progresses, especially as we saw the late 2010s be dominated with a lot of like OS fill in the blank worship, you know, OSDM, OS Doom, original whatever, you know, revival music. It's like we're going to start seeing stuff that just sounds alien, like, you know, Mothcock and Machine Girl and stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I'm looking forward to, because the old school vibe, the revival stuff has never been something I was ever really into. I mean, you know, I dig it when a band has like some riffs that you're like, okay, this sounds like Entombed a little bit, but they're throwing another thing in there to make it interesting, you know. But, you know, there are bands that just literally sound like they came from the early 90s, you know, and I'm just like, man, it's like, don't you want to do something a little bit different, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I always thought it was weird because, you know, I'm 33. So, like, from my understanding, it's like, well, in the early 90s, there were a zillion bands that didn't record records that probably sounded like better versions of 90s revival shit that's coming out today. And it's like, if that shit wouldn't have hacked it in 96, why are people like, is it like a because you can situation? It's like, you can, but must you? Like, don't we have enough 90s revival, 80s revival stuff? I mean, I guess we don't because it sells, but like I'm totally there with you. It's like, that desire to do something different is always going to drive us. Like, I'll leave you with this. Like, the new Mask record we're writing, we have a week booked at the at Strawberry Studios in France. I believe that is a haunted studio, but like not haunted in like a spooky way. But like, I believe that there is something in that studio that creates, I don't know, it's like a Genesis spirit. Chopin lived there, but Staying Alive was recorded there. Fleetwood Mac recorded there. Can recorded there. Obscured by Clouds by Pink Floyd was recorded there. Honky Chateau was written about the chateau. Like Rocket Man was recorded there. Iggy Pop and David Bowie's The Idiot was recorded there.
One of my favorite records, actually.
Yeah, I mean, like China Girl was written about the chateau, and the kick drum sound on Nightclubbin' was the drum beat on Closer by Nine Inch Nails. So it's like, that's a lot of, Genesis right there, like krautrock, post-punk, industrial, disco, all stemming from this one room. So I was like, we gotta record here, and I was very fortunate because I'm a nerd. I followed the studio from being in disrepair to being taken over by new owners to being like one of the first people to have studio time booked there. I believe like currently it's impossible to get booked again, but like Sparks were just there and stuff like that. There's an amazing video, like one of the first musical groups acts to record their Sting and Shaggy.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought it's very, very French. Like who will we have? Let's get Sting and Shaggy to perform It Wasn't Me to break in this legendary studio. But like, yeah, I mean, we're gonna record there. And we have a week there, and Despair Anthems was recorded in 4 days. And Winterlong was recorded in 3 days. So a week is longer than I've ever had in a studio in my life to just record. And the fact that it's a giant haunted castle makes it even cooler. So it's like, the next record is definitely not going to be anything like anything I've ever done, anything like we've ever recorded. And hopefully it won't be like anything that, is like, out there. hopefully we don't like end up coming out there with like a total revival record. And I'm like, yo, can we delete like this whole podcast?
when are you guys going out there to do this?
We don't know. So basically I need to get a European booking agent because we were working with Doomstar, but then our agent left Doomstar, so we don't have a booking agent anymore. But like, I'm hoping that we could like play Europe, and that if we play Europe, we can do the, do the gig. But like, if not, then we're gonna have to, I don't know, we're gonna have to get hit by a Walmart truck or something, and then fat settlement like Tracy Morgan, right around the throne, Dave Grohl style.
Well, keep me in the loop on that, man. Maybe after you record this record, you can come back and talk about it on this. That'd be fun,
dude. Absolutely. Like, I would love to, once we even have demos, Like, you'll be one of the first people to hear them.
Oh, dude, that's really cool. I appreciate that.
Dude, no problem. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on your fucking show, man. This is cool.
Hell yeah, man. So, yeah, that was awesome talking. And once again, just throw those dates out for people in the area. You know, just what the July dates you got coming up, so they know what to do in the coming weeks.
So, July 21st, we're at Yuck Yucks Comedy Club. No, we're at Ortlieb's in Philadelphia, and then 22nd, we're at St. Vitus in New York, and then I think the 23rd, we're in Quebec City, and then the 24th, we're in Montreal, or we're in Montreal on the 23rd, and we're in Quebec City on the 24th. I do not know off the top of my head.
I feel you, man. Sometimes the same thing happens to me.
I'll be in Canada though, but like that's for sure. I'll be in Canada unless the people at the Canadian border are like, you can't come to Canada, in which case I won't be in Canada. But the plan is to be in Canada.
It's actually real easy to get into Canada right now.
Really?
Yeah, we anticipated so many problems crossing the border, and we had zero problems. It was just, they didn't even look at our paperwork for the, there's like that invite letter that allegedly you need. I didn't show anything to anybody. They just let us in the country.
I really hope that happens with us because, I haven't been to Canada. And I've heard all these crazy stories about how they hold you up at the border, and it's like they really don't want people who aren't from Canada being in Canada.
As long as no one has like a criminal record, because drugs are legal in Canada right now. As of some point in the past, they made drugs legal in Canada. So
that's pretty.
All you have to do is like declare that you have some of these substances on you. And,
that's sick.
Yeah, it's.
I've only done one illegal thing that I feel like I would ever get stopped at the border for, and it's I went on a cruise ship in California after they legalized marijuana, and I went on with some pot brownies, and then I guess I didn't eat all the brownies on the trip, and as I was coming off the fucking cruise ship, one of the like border patrol guys pulls me aside, and they fucking go through my bag and they like strip search me, and then they go, they don't find anything, but then they go through my bag and they're like, they're like, what is this? And I was like, it's a brownie. They're like, does it have pot in it? And I was like, yeah, isn't pot legal? And they were like, yes, it is, but it's not legal in international waters. They're like, technically you just smuggled drugs into Mexico and then back into America. And I was like, I thought that weed was legal. So they gave me like a $500 fine, which was pretty not bad considering I'm like technically an international drug smuggler. So, that would be the only thing. But like, even then I feel like, if they were like, can you explain this international drug smuggling charge? And it would be like, well, you see, I took a day cruise to Cozumel and I didn't eat the last quarter of my pot brownie. I can't imagine a Canadian border guard is going to be like, well, fucking clearly you're a menace.
Yeah, it's just felonies they're after, really. I mean, if you're like a murderer or like some kind of like, a guy who's like breaks into liquor stores or something, they don't want people like that in the country.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I don't have any sort of felony record. I'm too stupid to get pot back into California, get pot brownies into California. But other than that, I mean, I'm sure if that's the case, then we'll be fine, and then we'll be able to play for the fine people of Quebec City. And hopefully I'll be able to not butcher hello in French because that's apparently they're like mostly French speaking, and
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah. Quebec City's they're like even more brutal about French than the French are. Like at least like in France, if you know a little bit of French, they'll give you the opportunity to speak French over in France. If you speak a little bit of French in Quebec and they don't like your accent, they just switch to English and shut you down immediately.
I'm just gonna like speak English, and hopefully they don't just shut me down. Just in general, like because like I don't know any other languages other than like English and like Rosetta Stone level 1 French. Like I know "ouf" is egg. like "chat" is cat. And yeah, you know, like basically like "donde esté la biblioteca," you know, kind of like fucking French. Like I will very likely go up there and be like, "Hola, Quebec City," and see how quickly the fucking room clears out. Because that's really, I don't know any other language, but apparently the rest of the band is like learning like basic French. So this is gonna be real fun.
Yeah, you guys will be all right, definitely.
I'm gonna be the only one who won't be able to order a fucking beer on tour.
Yeah, Montreal is great. Montreal is probably my favorite city in Canada. I love Montreal.
Dude, I'm so excited. I've never been to Montreal. I think I was in like Vancouver for an hour as a kid.
Vancouver's cool, but I have to say I prefer Montreal. Like it's just the city is like so cool, and the people there are cool, and you know they enjoy stuff that we, you know, collectively you and I are into, and that's why I like that city so much.
Dude, I can't fucking wait. Dude, this was so great talking to you, but I have to hop off the phone.
Yeah, man.
Dude, let's catch up off the podcast line about some gigs.
Hell yeah.
And I will catch you soon.
Take care, man. Have a good night.
You fed your teeth, but I turned my You